The day the sky stole gravity, it also stole my father. I was 8 when the quantum fissure burst open above the red silt plateau. A pulse of turquoise light that turned dust into constellations and wheat stalks into upside-down fountains. Anything not bolted, rooted, or desperately clutched lifted off the ground and drifted toward the firmament as though the heavens had inhaled. My father had been repairing an irrigation turbine. One heartbeat he stood beside me, wrench between his teeth, sleeves rolled past scarred elbows. The next, he was receding, just one more dark silhouette against that devouring brilliance, his cry Dopplering into silence. Most families fled south, chasing reliable physics. My mother, however, decided she would not abandon a place simply because nature had flipped a coin and called its own bluff. She was a stonemason, stubborn as the basalt she carved. If the ground no longer welcomed us, she reasoned, perhaps the undersides of cliffs would. And so, in the brittle months that followed, a band of widows and orphans learned to live like stalactites. We called our settlement Totu Umberhaven, a lattice of basalt ribs, bolted iron, and twisted rope, suspended beneath the overhang of Mother Cliff, one of the scarred ridges bordering the upended expanse. Above our houses, the plateau's surface served as roof. Below us yawned sky turned into ocean, its currents pulling upward toward the vanishing blue, where debris faded from sight. We slept in hammocks cocooned against updrafts, tended hydroponic vines dangling on tethers, and walked inverted streets of mesh catwalks lit by bioluminescent algae. For 16 years, the outside world pretended we were myth, a footnote in seismology journals. Then came the Graveneers. They arrived in sleek dirigibles with bellies full of ballast and avarice. To them, the upended expanse was not a wound demanding caution, but a load to be mined, pockets of negative mass, errant bosons, and floating ore that could revolutionize propulsion. Yet they needed local guides, people who understood how to move in a place where down was merely a rumor. That is how Leo Koren first set harness, in Umberhaven. He came hanging from a winch cable, boots braced against the cliff face, white jacket immaculate despite the grit. At the observation platform, I waited with a welcoming committee of 3, Counselor Danya, Brother Olam the physic monk, and myself, Chief Maintenance Engineer at 24, tool belt rattling like wind chimes. Leo doffed his helmet, revealing dark curls and the easy grin of someone unaware he is outnumbered by physics. "An honor," he said. "Your city is breathtaking." "It tries," I answered. Formalities concluded. We led him across a swaying bridge toward central gantry. He stared up, our up, his down, at gardens blooming in mesh spheres above the abyss. "Beautiful," he murmured, "and precarious." I caught the almost hidden calculation in his eyes, tensile strengths, load capacities, profit margins. Mother would have warned me then, but Mother had died 2 winters earlier in a tether snap avalanche. So I listened instead to gut instinct, which hummed uneasily. That night, the Graveneers unfurled a portable hollow screen at Council Hall. Their leader, Director Venn, projected charts of energy flux and commodity markets. If allowed to establish resource platforms, she claimed, they would share 30% of extracted antimass crystals with Umberhaven, enough to purchase medicine, anchor upgrades, maybe even build a school. Neighbors whispered temptation. Anchor bolts groaned in salty wind like dissenting elders. I raised my hand. "Your platforms add weight," I said. "Too much mass along the cliff could shear the very shelf we cling to." Director Venn arched a manicured brow. "Our engineers assure us the rock's integrity is sufficient." I bit back retort. No outsider statistic could match 16 years of touching stone. feeling its tremors run through bone. The council promised a decision in 3 days. The Graveneers retired to their airship, moored like a bloated silver fruit beneath the next ridge. That same night, I found Leo alone on the upper catwalk, sketching the city's silhouette in a pocket journal. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "Gravity's wrong. My body imagines it's falling even when it's safe, and the wind sings up instead of down." I offered him a thermos of Cliff Moss tea. He sipped, grimaced, then laughed. "Tastes like someone roasted seaweed in battery acid." "It's an acquired masochism," I agreed. Silence settled. Lanterns swung above us, painting arcs of rust light across the canyon of stars. Leo flipped pages, revealing mechanical diagrams, winches, clamps, magnetic spikes. "Director Ven's plan is risky," he admitted, "but she thinks fortune favors boldness." "Fortune," I echoed, "usually favors the prepared, and the prepared are rarely bold," he countered, smiling like it hurt him to say so. Then softly, "We're not all vultures, Solara." I wanted to believe him. Maybe because companionship was scarce, and loneliness heavier than reversed gravity. We talked until artificial dawn, when eastward projectors flood the city in warm light to mimic sunrise. Over the next days, Umberhaven argued itself raw. Some families yearned for trade. Worn ropes and ration fatigue breed pragmatism. Others feared exploitation and collapse. The final vote split, even until Brother Olam invoked the gravity of caution. The council rejected the Graveneer proposal, offering limited scientific visitation instead. Director Ven's smile was thin as monofilament. "We respect your autonomy," she said, voice sour with the taste of unreaped profit. Her airship lifted, sails ringing. The relief in our city was palpable but brief. Because the Graveneers did not leave the expanse. They merely vanished from sight. On the 4th night following, alarms shrieked across the nets. I dashed from the repair bay, hands still slick with sealant, to see the impossible. Half our southern anchor girders had snapped upward. Steel tendon whips lashed against cliff, shredding stone. Whole neighborhoods tilted, lanterns shattered, their glass shards drifting like slow snow into the vault above. Panic erupted. People tried running uphill, only for loosened planks to pitch skyward beneath them. I rappelled to the failing anchors, heart-pounding double time. There, clamp marks, fresh, gleaming, a sabotage that had overloaded our weight distribution, leveraging the reversed pull to tear us free. Through the chaos, I spotted Leo scrambling along a service rail, toolkit flapping. Our eyes met. In his expression, horror and recognition danced an ugly duet. "Help me!" I shouted. Together we patched emergency cables, firing bolt drills into desperate holds. The city groaned but held, like a dying titan refusing final breath. By dawn we had stabilized most sectors, though 43 dwellings were gone, swallowed by heaven. Families lit mourning braziers along catwalks. Ash drifted upward with the lost. Council convened on our shaking plaza. Evidence pointed to Graveneer sabotage. Leo, standing beside me, seemed carved from regret. When questioned, he confessed. Director Ven intended to coerce compliance by demonstrating vulnerability. Operators had crept along the cliff on nightlines, snapping key stabilizers before fleeing in the airship's shadow. "But I did not know they would endanger lives," he pleaded. "I thought it was bluff. Minor damage, nothing catastrophic." Counselor Danya's grief-etched face hardened. Ignorance is no absolution. We locked him in the resonance chapel, a stone chamber whose thick walls mute the vertigo moans of wind. It was the closest we had to a jail. I argued we needed him. He knew Gravnir systems, protocols, frequencies. Another attack was certain. Yet trust was a frayed rope, and I was asking my people to step onto it barefooted. Ultimately, desperation won. The council released Leo under my watch on the condition he help repel whatever came next. We had scant hours. Scouts reported 3 Gravnir barges inbound, each bristling with magnetic harpoons designed to anchor directly into our cliff seam and convert Umberhaven into a harvesting rig. Once attached, they would siphon anti-mass crystals and pump them to waiting dirigibles. Collateral damage was irrelevant. Survivors could be rehoused or silenced. Mother used to say any stone can be split if you learn its song. I figured the same was true for airships. Leo and I pored over schematics. The barge's hulls were lightweight ferroalloy containing carbon nanotube reinforcement. Their weak point, the graviton inverters, compact reactors on the underside that protected crew from the zone's reversed pull by generating local downwash bubbles. Disable those, and the entire vessel would be yanked skyward like a leaf. But approach was lethal. Anti-personnel drones patrolled each inverter housing. Brother Olam suggested an alternative form of sabotage, interference at a distance via resonance emitters. The monks used singing bowls, scaled into parabolic dishes, to map fault lines. If we repurposed them, maybe we could overwhelm the inverters with harmonic noise, scramble their field stabilizers. We requisitioned every bronze gong, every beaten tin prayer plate, forging a massive choral array along the cliff face. I dispatched riggers to string kinetic hammers, automated mallets triggered by wind turbines. Umberhaven would become an enormous bell. Time slipped like knotless rope. The first barge darkened the horizon by afternoon, a rust rectangle trailing cables. I tuned the transmitter, fingers trembling. Leo calibrated frequency modulators. Around us, children pressed their ears to basalt, listening for the heartbeat of stone. "Ready," Leo whispered. I inhaled, pulled the main lever. Hammers struck metal. A roar of layered tones poured into the canyon, a cosmic throat song reverberating through flesh and bone. My molars vibrated. My vision wavered. At first, nothing. Then, a bloom of sparks erupted beneath the lead barge. Its inverter casings glowed white, then burst. A shockwave rippled across its hull. The ship lurched, pitching sideways. Crew scrambled in harnesses as the barge shot upward, tailspin blooming like a seed pod, caught in thermal draft. Cheers erupted from our nets and platforms. The second barge, however, adjusted harmonics. It deployed counter-oscillators, projecting equal and opposite frequencies. Our notes faltered into feedback, whining. The vessel continued closing, harpoon guns primed. I broke into sprint across a swaying footbridge toward the highest derrick, where spare hydrogen canisters sat stacked. Leo followed without question. "What's the plan?" he gasped, breath ragged. "The Graveneers favor equations," I said. "Let's give them an unsolvable one." We lashed 6 canisters to a junk sledge, rigged with altitude ignition flares and a crude gyro. Then we hauled the contraption along the rail to our highest plaza, Memorial Ledge, where a centuries-old thunder oak had anchored. Its roots, now exposed to open air, formed natural launch guides. Below, or above, depending on perspective, the second barge's harpoons fired. Steel lances buried into cliff strata, pull chains ratcheting. Stone cracked. Entire sections of our city shuddered. "Now!" I shouted. We kicked the sledge over the edge. Reverse gravity seized it, accelerating upward. Halfway to the barge, flares ignited, spinning the canisters like screaming comets. Crew scrambled to sever chains as the improvised missile slammed into inverter housings. A blossom of green fire engulfed the underbelly. The ship, no longer shielded, experienced the full hunger of the upended expanse. It rocketed skyward, trailing molten shrapnel and stunned Graveneers. The third barge veered away, choosing to flee rather than risk annihilation. It dumped ballast in frantic spurts, climbing for safe airspace. The assault was over, but Umberhaven was wounded. Harpoon chains had carved fissures in Mothercliff. One anchor shelf, weakened from sabotage earlier, tore free. 40 meters of residential deck crumpled and drifted upward, carrying 4 families who scrambled to lash themselves to anything solid. Among them was little Rin, daughter of my best friend, Mara. My pulse thundered as I clipped into a safety line and leapt into the gap. I soared down toward the fracturing platform, wind whipping hair into my eyes. Hooks bit into pine beams. "Grab on!" I yelled, slinging auxiliary straps to terrified residents. One by one, we anchored them to my lifeline. Leo, from the gantry, hauled the line hand over hand, face contorted with effort. When the last child was secured, I cut the line with a rescue knife. The broken deck drifted faster, until a gust caught it and swept it away, like a fractured kite. Back on solid catwalk, knees shaking, I watched the sky consume our wreckage. Emptiness echoed in ribcage hollows, where adrenaline had been. By midnight, calm settled. Adults gathered in the assembly dome, lanterns low, faces streaked with dust and relief. Counselor Danya addressed the crowd. "We have defended our home," she said, "and paid the price of being underestimated." She turned to Leo. Every gaze followed. Judgment weighed the air. He stepped forward. "I betrayed no secrets," he began, voice hoarse. "But my silence was complicity. I can never repay the lives lost. I can only offer the remainder of mine to repairing what I helped endanger." No one spoke for several breaths. Finally, Brother Olam nodded. "Service is heavier than guilt. Let him carry it." And so it was decided. Leo became both sentinel and exile within our ranks, welcome to labor, forbidden to leave unescorted. Months passed. We rebuilt, reinforcing anchor grids with salvaged barge hulls. I invented oscillating ballast pods, stone-filled sacks released on motorized winches to simulate weight where gravity had gone feral. Children learned calculus before walking. In the upended expanse, spatial intuition was survival. Letters from southern territories arrived via courier kites, urging evacuation. They spoke of corporations petitioning governments for extraction mandates, of mercenaries trading muscles for patents. But we had become vertebrae of the cliff. Removal would kill both host and guest. One late afternoon, while I inspected hydroponic tendrils, Leo approached carrying a folded sheet. "Prototype," he said. I opened it. A design for a mobile city segment, essentially a colossal arc suspended on negative mass balloons, tethered to cliffs by retractable lariats. "If outsiders come again," he said, "we can relocate sectors temporarily, avoid concentrated loads." The concept was audacious, borderline impossible. I smiled, feeling the ghost of father's pride flutter inside. "Let's build the first module," I replied. Work began. Riggers sang shanties that alternated between defiance and wonder. Each rivet we drove rang like punctuation in a new language of resilience. 6 weeks later, during a violet dusk, I sat on the gantry with Lao. Below, planets surfaced early, bright and sharp as obsidian shards. Above, the plateau hid us from the true ground, which by now felt hypothetical. "Do you ever miss normalcy?" he asked. I thought of gravity as childhood memory. My father's boots scuffing dirt, the smell of bread cooling on an actual horizontal table. "Normalcy is a story we tell ourselves," I said. "We've traded it for possibility." He leaned back against support spar. Possibility can be terrifying. So can stagnation. I nudged his shoulder. Besides, terror keeps the mind limber. That night, as I lay in my hammock, I imagined the future. Fleets of hanging cities, connected by woven cable bridges, gardens floating like inverted rainforests. Outsiders might come bearing greed, but we had turned vulnerability into architecture, catastrophe into culture. And sometimes, when the wind was quiet, I could almost hear my father's laughter traveling across the upended expanse, falling upward past constellations forged from ruined plows and lost wrenches. I would close my eyes and picture him caught on some star, watching, waiting, knowing that gravity's betrayal had not broken us. It had merely dared us to redefine home. We accepted.